face an economic crisis that's unprecedented. Not only the problem that businesses have in borrowing money and that families have in borrowing money, that's a big change, the credit crisis. And the recession, you know what that is, when people are laid off and spending goes down. And it's even worse than that because this is happening in countries all over the world. And a lot of it's psychological, where people fear the future and so they hunker down and stop spending money, and then everybody else does the same thing. So we have a recession and a credit crisis. The answer to it is going to be, in part, to do something that America hasn't done for a while. And the circumstances are so unusual, it means that Democrats and Republicans alike are now saying, okay, we don't like the government to get involved in spending a lot of money, but this is such an unusual situation. We got to get the economy jump-started, and we've got to get the growth to be sustainable. And so the government's going to get much more actively involved in trying to get things going again. So that's an opportunity to do some things that we've needed to do for other reasons anyway. Economic crisis. Second crisis. We got 2 wars going on, and if you look at them, this is the second war in Iraq, and I disagreed with the decision to invade Iraq, but a lot of people felt differently, and there were many reasons why that decision, which I thought was a mistake, was made. But one of those reasons was we get so much of our oil from overseas, and most of the oil in the world that's easily recoverable is in that part of the world called the Persian Gulf, where Iraq is, and Saudi Arabia, and Iran, and those countries around the Persian Gulf. And so our leaders over a long period of time, for the last 35 years, have naturally had to think, whoa, wait a minute, if we depend on foreign oil for so much of what keeps our economy going, we got to really pay attention to anything that might threaten the loss of access to that oil. And so long as we're so dependent on that foreign oil, we're vulnerable to being drawn into these wars over there. And the cost is just enormous. And of course, the loss of life is so tragic, and our military personnel are heroes to us, and we think of them always. And of course, the others who've lost lives too. So we got one war to end honorably and responsibly, as President-elect Obama says, and another to wage wisely, and that's in Afghanistan. But we have a national security crisis, economic crisis, national security crisis. Third crisis is one that I talk about a lot, the climate crisis, global warming. What's that all about? Most of you know what it's all about, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But basically, because we've been relying so heavily on oil and coal, we've been burning larger and larger amounts of it in ways that pollute the atmosphere, not just of a city, not just of a region, but of the entire world. And carbon dioxide, CO2, the principal global warming pollution, is different from the regular kind of pollution we're used to thinking about. It's different because it's invisible, it's tasteless, and it's odorless. So you know the old saying, out of sight, out of mind? Well, it's been invisible, so we have found it easy not to think about it. But it is now changing the environment in very, very harmful ways. The CO2 gets up there and it traps the sunlight. Sunlight comes in, the heat tries to go back out, and naturally some of it is trapped naturally, and that's a good thing, but we're thickening that blanket so much that the temperature is going up. It's like the planet has a fever. And if a baby has a fever, you go to the doctor, and if it keeps going up, you take the doctor's recommendation usually. Well, you might want a second opinion. We've gotten a second opinion and a third and a fourth, and we still really haven't done anything about it. Barack Obama wants to do something about it. But today, January 19, 2009, we will put 70 million tons of this global warming pollution into the Earth's atmosphere. And a lot of people think it's okay. They go outside, they look up at the sky. The sky seems like a huge place. How could we possibly have any impact on it? Just like they used to go out on the ground and look at the sun rise in the east and set in the west and conclude that the sun went around the earth. They were wrong then, and anybody who thinks that it's okay to put all this pollution up there is wrong today. We have to change it. The entire North Polar ice cap is melting. Sea levels are rising, storms are getting stronger. You know the story. It has to be dealt with, and you have to help us deal with it, because you're not encumbered with these old assumptions that it's okay just to put all the pollution up there. So, 3 crises that I mentioned now. Economic crisis, the wars, the climate crisis. There's a common thread that runs through all 3 of these crises. It is our over-dependence on carbon-based fuels, oil and coal. And if you grab hold of that thread and pull on it, then all of these crises begin to unravel, and you have the solution right in your hands: renewable energy. It's time for us to end our dependence on dirty coal and foreign oil and go to solar power and wind power and geothermal. Enough sunlight falls on the surface of the earth every 45 minutes to power all of the energy needs of the entire world for a full year. So what we've got to do is invest in the new kinds of solar collectors and turn that into electricity and turn it into useful heat. Enough wind power flows through the mountain states every day to power all of the United States energy needs. So we have to build new windmills. We have to become more efficient. We have to use computers better, and we have to do the other things to switch over from dirty, polluting, expensive, dangerous fuels that come so frequently from parts of the world where we have to fight wars, and switch instead to a new source of energy that runs on fuel that's free forever: the sun and the wind. And guess what? When we make those investments, we create jobs, and we put money in the hands of working people and working families, and we get the stimulus to the economy that fights the economic crisis. And guess what? When we switch over to renewable energy, then we don't have to worry about what's going on with that oil in the Persian Gulf anymore, because we have energy here at home. But my purpose is not simply to tell you these facts or to convince you that this is true. I believe passionately that it is. And I began my commitment on this issue when I was a college student. I had a professor who was the first scientist to measure CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere. It just opened my mind to these new facts and realities, and I've seen it for the last 45 years as the evidence has come in.